Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Bianca Gonzalez, and I'm the Bullying Prevention Program Coordinator with the Riverside Medical Clinic Charitable Foundation. Welcome to our first session of day 3 within our virtual bullying prevention conference. I want to go ahead and just cover a couple of helpful Zoom tips before we go ahead and get into the rest of the session, and just a couple of new features that we will be offering today as well. So we are offering closed captioning services. So if you see a CC icon towards the bottom of your screen, there should be an arrow pointing up. If you click on that, it should show subtitles, and that's how you're able to turn them on. Please follow the same steps to turn them off. It is fairly easy to use. We're also going to be recording our session today, and it will be uploaded on our YouTube channel within 24 to 48 hours. And if you've been attending our previous webinars, they are already on our YouTube channel for your convenience. We are also providing a kindness kit giveaway. So as you can see, our grand prize is kindness kits for a classroom. And then we also have a couple of attendee prizes, which consist of Amazon gift cards as well. So if you're not an educator, and let's say you do win the grand prize, you can actually donate a kit to your classroom of choice. And just keep in mind that this giveaway is only available to Riverside County attendees. We also have the chat box feature available. As you can see, my colleague Alina, she's assisting, she's adding in some links. I see a couple of you noting good morning, so you're aware of that feature. We also have the Q&A feature available. So we're gonna have a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. So please feel free to leave any comments or questions until the end. And after each of our sessions, you're going to have the opportunity to complete a short survey. So we look forward to receiving your valuable feedback, and by completing the short survey, it's also an additional entry within our kindness kit giveaway as well. So I also want to go ahead and note that we are very appreciative of the help of our wonderful sponsors that have assisted us in facilitating this week-long event. So I do want to go ahead and shout them out. So I want to go ahead and thank the Riverside Medical Clinic, Kaiser Permanente, the Press Enterprise, City of Riverside, Riverside County Board of Supervisors, Hub International, IHP, Alliant, Singer Luwak, Union Bank, and LabCorp. We thank you for your support. So I now want to go ahead and introduce a little bit about our programming and what we do within our community. And as you can see here, this is the impact that we had in 2019. But I also want to share what we've been doing during this time in 2020 as well. So a little bit about us. We were actually founded 36 years ago in 1984 by 19 RMC physicians. They formed our foundation with the goal of improving health and quality of life in inland Southern California through advocacy, individual and professional education, and service. Our foundation holds monthly support groups in regards to chronic illnesses such as endometriosis, prostate cancer, Alzheimer's, and brain injury and stroke. Currently, our groups are meeting online, and we have also been, they've been receiving wellness check calls on behalf of us, and we are sending monthly newsletters providing vital support information as well. Our scholarship program to date has awarded over $25,000 in 3 different areas related to health education and special need programs. And in 2012, we held a lecture on bullying that inspired us to launch the Anti-Bullying Institute, also known as ABI. So this program, we have been offering services and resources to parents, administrators, and children in English and Spanish to assist in ending the cycle of bullying. ABI has had a great impact. We've impacted over 14,000 students and parents through student and parent-centered bullying prevention education. And we also currently serve over 20,000 Hero alumni through our bullying prevention programs. Our Traveling Triplets programming is a doll therapy program which brings meaning and purpose for someone who is living with dementia. And this program is currently on hold, but we do hope to return to a normal schedule as soon as it is safe for our seniors. And lastly, we have reached thousands through our health education and events in honor of some of our founding doctors. So I now want to go ahead and introduce our presenter for today, Ms. Rilee Hillman. A little bit about Rilee is she is the prevention coordinator at the Riverside Area Rape Crisis Center, where her goal is to educate the community and empower youth to use their voice to prevent sexual violence. She wants to break the stigma around sexual violence and ensure that everyone knows they have people there to support them. Rilee received her BA in psychology at the University of California, Santa Cruz, and her MA in forensic psychology at California Baptist University. She believes that education is the foundation of prevention. Educating people on these difficult topics is the first step towards ending sexual violence. So I now want to go ahead and give it away to Rilee.
Thank you so much, Bianca. I'm so excited to be here with you guys today, and I will be talking about bystander intervention with y'all. And if you have any questions throughout, go ahead and put them in the chat or the Q&A, but we will have some time at the end as well to talk over some questions. Before we get into it, I do want to mention our services at the center. So we have a 24-hour hotline that anybody can call at any time of the day or night, and they will be connected to a crisis counselor. Now, this crisis counselor can help de-escalate the situation if you're feeling a little bit emotional. We can also help with resources or set up a counseling appointment. We also offer advocacy and accompaniment, which means if you or someone you love is going through something related to their sexual assault, like a hospital examination or a law enforcement interview or court dates, we can come with you guys to be an emotional support person, to give you some resources and help you understand what's going on. We also offer free in-person counseling and support groups. We also have women-to-women self-defense classes once a month, and we offer those in both English and Spanish. And then we do presentations and educational classes, so kind of like this one that we're on right now. During COVID, all of our services have been adapted to an online model. So our counseling, our advocacy support groups are all through Zoom, and our self-defense classes, presentations, obviously we're all on Zoom right now as well. All of our services at RAARCC are free and bilingual. So we offer every service in English and Spanish. We just need you to request it if that's something you're interested in. All right, so then we'll get into bystander intervention. And we'll start with what a bystander is. So bystanders are individuals who observe violence or witness the conditions that perpetrate violence. So they're not directly involved in the situation, but they have the ability or the choice to intervene or speak up in that situation. They just choose not to. So has anybody ever heard of where this bystander effect comes from, where we first see it? And if not, that's okay.
And I can help you with the chat box, Rilee. So if any of you want to note that in the chat box, I can go ahead and share that with her.
That's okay if you don't. It happened a very long time ago. So I'm actually going to show you guys a video, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it.
In 1964, Kitty Genovese was brutally stabbed to death in Queens, New York. The attack lasted over 30 minutes. Her assailant twice left the scene and returned to continue the assault. 38 witnesses watched from their apartment windows, neither coming to her aid nor calling the police as she cried for help. The public was outraged over the apparent callousness and lack of social responsibility on the part of the bystanders. Intrigued by the bystanders' inaction, Princeton psychologist John Darley and his colleague Bibb Latané decided to try to identify the factors that produce this type of passivity.
The key to unlocking this is the fact that 38 people failed to help. That's what shocks us. And if we picture one person looking, turning away and failing to help, another person looking, turning away, that's awful, that's terrifying. But if we realize that there were complex networks of relationships between the bystanders, and that these networks tend, the effects that produces tend to cascade to produce no responding, then we get it. And what's so terrifying turns out to be the explanatory cue.
Darley and Latané hypothesized that the presence of others can influence an individual's interpretation of events. Emergencies occur infrequently and often are ambiguous. For example, is this man experiencing a medical emergency, or is he perhaps intoxicated? Is action warranted in this situation? When in a group, a person checks the reactions of others. If other observers appear calm and indifferent, it is assumed everything must be okay. One concludes, the man must be drunk, and continues walking. By contrast, when a bystander is alone, the hypothesis predicts he or she is more likely to assess the situation accurately and then provide help to the individual in distress.
So what we see there is really the turning point in psychology, which we now come to know as the bystander effect. So the bystander effect, this case of Kitty Genovese, was really in psychology the key case that people looked at when studying the bystander effect. So the bystander effect is a social psychological claim that individuals are less likely to offer help to a victim when other people are present. So the greater number of bystanders, the less likely that someone is to take action. And there are a few reasons behind this. Two of the more common ones are the diffusion of responsibility. So the diffusion of responsibility says that people feel less inclined and less of a responsibility to take action in an emergency when there are other people present. And this is because the responsibility is shared among everyone there. So if it was just them in that emergency and they did nothing to help, it would be, oh my gosh, this is all my fault that this person was hurt. Versus when there are more people present, it's all of our faults. It's not just one person's fault. The second reason that we see the bystander effect is because of social influence. So this is kind of what the video said. We monitor the people around us and their behavior, and that tells us how we should respond in the situation. So if we see one person not doing anything in the situation, then we think, oh, well, we don't need to do anything. And that trickles along. Two other things that we also see in the bystander effect is the evaluation apprehension. So this is the risk of embarrassment if the situation isn't an emergency or isn't needing intervention. And then we also see the cause of misfortune. So somebody is less likely to intervene in a situation if we perceive that the person is responsible for their misfortune and that we don't need to intervene in that instance. So when we're looking at the bystander effect, people often think, well, that doesn't make sense, like just intervene, we should all do it. And that some of these psychological claims like the diffusion of responsibility and social influence aren't really valid. But we see that there are situational and personal attributes that affect our likelihood to intervene in a situation. So for situational factors, like I mentioned on the last slide, the presence and number of other people can impact if we intervene or not. That diffusion of responsibility, that social influence impacts if we intervene or not. We also see the uncertainty of the situation. So like the evaluation apprehension I was saying, if we're not sure if what's going on really warrants intervention, then we're going to be a little bit more hesitant to intervene. We also see that the perceived level of urgency or danger really impacts our willingness to intervene. So if it's not something that is seen as extremely violent, maybe it's just somebody being catcalled on the street, then we're less likely to intervene. We also see that the setting of the event can really impact whether or not we take action. So if it's an inappropriate setting, maybe you're somewhere with friends you've never met before, or at a party at a person's house you've never been to before. you might think or feel that it's not really your right to step in at that moment. We also see that social norms in our society tell us to do nothing, that we shouldn't really intervene, we should mind our own business. There are also some personal attributes that we see that can impact our willingness to step in or our likelihood to step in these situations. So we see that our relevant skills or experience might impact our stepping in. So if we don't have a lot of knowledge on the situation or on the topic that maybe is being joked about, we might not feel like we have the authority to step in. We also see that a relationship with the victim or the perpetrator might heavily impact if we step in or not. If the perpetrator is a friend or somebody that we love, we might not want to confront them. On the flip side, if the victim is somebody that we love, we might be more likely to intervene because we love them and we don't want them to be hurt. We also see that our feelings about the situation can impact if we intervene or not. So for example, we might have this belief that a lot of society does, that men cannot be abused or they cannot be harassed. So if we see it happening, our feeling about that, oh, well, you can't be abused, like you're strong, you're a man, we're not gonna intervene. When in reality, we know that men are likely to be abused or harassed as well. And then the last one is really we have our pros and cons. Is the personal cost of intervening greater than if we don't intervene? Meaning, if I intervene, am I gonna get hurt as well? If we weigh that pro and con, and that con of intervening is greater than not intervening, then we're not going to take action in that situation. And so when we're looking at people who don't intervene, we're looking at bystanders and we ask them, why didn't you act? A lot of the things we hear are, I don't know what to do or say, I don't want to cause a scene, it's none of my business, or I don't want my friend to be mad at me if I say something to them. So when we're looking at our likelihood of intervention, it's also important that we look at it at a multi-level approach. So not just at the individual level, because it's not only who we are that causes this inability or unwillingness to step in a situation. So of course, at the individual level, we have everything that I was just talking about, our personal knowledge, our skills, our self-efficacy in intervening in these situations. Those things determine on an individual level if we will intervene in the situation. At the relationship level, we are more likely to intervene if we have a supportive social circle. So I'll give you an example. If you're at the mall with your friends and you see somebody being harassed, and you intervene to try and get it to stop. And then you come back to your friend group and they say things like, why'd you do that? That was so weird. I wouldn't have done that. That wasn't your business. You shouldn't do that anymore. That person who intervened is not going to intervene in future situations because they don't want to be rejected by their friend group. Now, on the flip side, if they came back and their friends were like, wow, that was awesome. Like, I wanted to intervene. That was really messed up. I'm so glad you did something. That reinforces the behavior and makes it more likely that they will intervene in future situations. Now, the same thing can be said about the community level. So if our community, our school community, teachers, administration, church, whatever environment we are in, whatever community we are in, if they encourage intervention, then we're more likely to intervene. And again, it falls back to the wanting to be accepted and not rejected within our social circles, within our community. And then at the societal level, like I was mentioning a little bit earlier, our social norms tell us not to intervene in these situations. So in order to increase the likelihood of intervention, we have to change these social norms. We have to change these expectations about acceptable behavior intervening in these situations. And the way we do that is we talk about it. We become active bystanders, we become upstanders, and we show other people that it's okay to step in these types of situations. And so that brings us to bystander intervention. So what we can do about the bystander effect and what we can do in these situations. So bystander intervention is when people recognize a potentially harmful situation and choose to respond in a way that can positively influence the outcome. So they don't just stand by and do nothing about it. And so when we're talking about being an active bystander and engaging in bystander intervention, it can sometimes be difficult to understand when we need to intervene, because there's no clear line, well, these are situations that we intervene and these are situations that we do not intervene, because it's not as black and white. It's not that simple. These behaviors exist on a continuum. And so there's a misconception that, oh, well, we should only intervene when somebody is being violent or when somebody is being assaulted. But that's not true. We also need to intervene on those inappropriate comments, those harassments, and other forms of abuse before they get to that violent level, because these small things add up over time and have a higher likelihood of leading to violence. And so the event or a situation that we need to intervene on exists on a continuum. And depending on where that event is on that continuum, it might require a different type of intervention or a different level or severity of intervention. So when we're looking at this continuum, we have on the left side, we have our healthy, mutually respectful, and safe interactions, our flirtatious and playful, things that we're okay with, that don't really warrant intervention. And then we get more into the age inappropriate or non-mutual things like inappropriate jokes, and then into harassment, catcalling. And then, of course, on the very far side of the continuum is our sexually abusive or violent and assault type behaviors. And so when we're looking at this continuum, like I mentioned, it's gonna be a different type of intervention depending on where the behavior falls on this continuum. For example, an active sexual assault will warrant somebody calling 911 to get help. Whereas you wouldn't necessarily call 911 when you hear an inappropriate or a lewd joke. So that's why we just want to evaluate where on this continuum it falls and then determine what is necessary. It's still important that we stop these earlier things, these inappropriate jokes, this harassment like catcalls, because like I mentioned, eventually, without being stopped, those behaviors can turn into violence in the future. And so when we're talking about bystander intervention, I want to give you guys some tools that you can use in order to be an active bystander. And so this is called the 5 Ds of bystander intervention. And I'm going to go through each one individually in order to explain a little bit more about it, because this is meant to be a toolkit for you to be able to reference this and think, what is the best thing that I can do in this situation? So the first D we have is direct. So direct means that we're stepping in directly to the situation to intervene. We're being firm, we're clear, we're addressing the problematic behavior and keeping the target safe. So you're directly intervening in the situation and addressing the behavior. In distract, you are also directly intervening in the situation, but you're creating a distraction and you're not focusing on the behavior. So you're trying to interrupt whatever's going on at that current moment. So you might make a joke. You might ask the perpetrator a question like, hey, do you know what time it is? Or ask the target, oh, do you want to go get a drink with me? So the goal of distract is pretty simple. What it sounds like is to distract the people from what's going on. So it's not as firm and not as direct as the direct intervention where you're saying, hey, you need to stop touching her. You're distracting them from what's going on and trying to get them away from the situation and diffuse it. The next one we have is delegate. So maybe you don't feel comfortable being directly involved or trying to distract them. So with delegate, we're getting help from someone who is better equipped to handle the situation. So that might be an authority figure or getting more people involved. And also talking to maybe the waitress or the bouncer or the store owner or the host of the party, whoever might have more of an ability and authority to handle the situation in a positive way. The next one is document. So document is something you want to do when the person who is the target of this violence is already getting help. So again, I want to make that really clear. Document we want to do when the person is already receiving help. So if the person is already receiving help, then we want to document it. Quite literally, document, record it, take a picture of it, write things down, where you are, who's involved, what day it is, what time it is. And we want to do all of this so that we can have evidence of what's been going on. So if it's something extreme, like a sexual assault, we can give this evidence to the police officers, to the court, to prove what happened. If it's something smaller, maybe inappropriate jokes or harassment, and we see that it's the same person over and over again, like our friend, we can use this as evidence of their behavior and what they're doing. So we can bring it to them and show them, like, you do this all the time, you maybe need to stop. It increases our evidence against what they're doing, so they can't come back at us and say, I never did that, what are you talking about? And then you can say, no, you did, I have it written down right here every single time you did it. So again, with document, we want to make sure that the person is already getting help before we do these things. And then the last one is debrief. So this can come in two different ways. So we can check in with the target or the victim of the violence or of the harassment after the fact to ensure that they feel safe and comfortable. So you might ask, do you want to go to a safe place? Do you want to talk about it? Hey, I saw this person doing this, are you okay? And then it can also look like talking to the perpetrator after the fact to educate them on why what they were doing was wrong. So with this, we want to make sure that we don't come off as aggressive or like we're attacking them. So it might be like, hey, saying that type of joke is really hurtful because it makes people uncomfortable. Or I notice you say this a lot and that's not really okay. So we want to educate them on why what they were doing was wrong. And so these 5 Ds of bystander intervention, again, like I said, are a toolkit for you to use if you find yourself in these situations that need intervening. And so when we're talking about intervention itself, if we're intervening on these situations, we have some strategies that are helpful when doing this. So the first one is using I statements. So we want to state our feelings, name the behavior, and how we expect the person to respond. And so it might sound something like, I feel upset when you tell those jokes. Please don't do that anymore. So we're focusing on our feelings about what's going on rather than criticizing or blaming their behavior. And that again helps us come off less aggressive and less like we're attacking them. Because if they feel like we're attacking them or that we're responding aggressively, then they're going to respond aggressively and they're not going to be as open to what you have to say. The next one, which is pretty simple sometimes, is a silent stare. Our eyes convey a lot of meaning, a lot of emotions. So if we give that disapproving look, it can be really powerful, especially if they already have an inkling that what they did or said was wrong. The next one is group intervention. So there are safety and power in numbers. Sometimes you might feel more comfortable to engage or intervene in a situation when you have a friend with you. And this is really best used when somebody has a clear pattern of this inappropriate behavior. So like I was mentioning with the document, if somebody is doing this over and over again, we want to bring these examples and give evidence. And if we have more people telling them what they're doing wrong, then it's not just one person who's telling me these things are wrong, it's all of my friends. And so that carries a little bit more power than if it's just one person. The next one we can use is humor. So it can reduce tension and it might make it easier for the person to hear you. Now, we do want to be careful that we don't use too much because we don't want to undermine the importance of what we're saying, but it can still be really effective and a way to have the person hear you easier instead of getting defensive. The next one, which is one of my favorite ones, one of my most effective ones when I intervene in situations, are bringing it home. So make it applicable to their lives. So it might be, I hope no one ever talks to you that way. Or what if somebody said that to your mom? What if somebody said that to your sister? What if somebody said that your girlfriend deserved to be raped? So it helps prevent the perpetrator from dehumanizing their target. And it can be really effective because it makes them stop and think. It's like, oh, well, I never really thought of it that way. When in reality, yes, we know that that is somebody's sister, brother, mom, friend, significant other. So it helps us make their target a little bit more human. The next one that we can use if we're friends with the person is saying things like, you know, we're friends, right? Like, I need to tell you something. So it reframes this intervention as you being caring towards your friend and not necessarily critical. So if it's a stranger who's intervening and saying it's like, hey, like, you really need to stop this, it might not be as effective as if it's a friend, because we tend to think that our friends care about us. So we can say things like, hey, you know, as your friend, I've got to tell you that the jokes you're telling are hurting people, even if you don't really mean it. So coming from somebody that we love is sometimes beneficial to stopping this behavior. And then, of course, distracting them. So this can snap somebody out of their, whatever their comfort zone is, their sexist comfort zone, their racist comfort zone, whatever it is. So it can stop them in the middle. If they start to tell a joke, just distract them, because then it can stop them from what they're thinking. And so now that you guys have types of intervention, some intervention strategies, I want to take you through the 5 steps of taking action. So the first step is to simply notice the event. Notice it along the continuum that we were talking about. Where does it fall? The next is to interpret it as a problem. So we want to consider, okay, does this situation need my attention? Does it need my intervention? So if it doesn't, cool, we're good. But if it does need our attention and our action, then we want to assume personal responsibility. So decide if you have a responsibility or if you have the ability to help in that situation. And then we want to know how to help. So we want to choose what form of assistance to use. Are we going to be direct? Are we going to delegate? Are we going to distract? Do we need to take more severe action like calling 911? And then we want to implement that. So we want to act. We want to know how to implement that choice safely. If we decided to be direct, we want to implement that. We want to be direct in that situation now. And then one thing I also want to note too, if we're delegating or if we're already helping and it's something that needs help immediately, like 911 help, it's important that we don't just call out to the crowd, somebody call 911, because we see the same thing happen with those bystander effects, the diffusion of responsibility, social apprehension, things like that. It is more effective if you look straight in the eye of somebody and you say, hey, go call 911, because that puts the responsibility solely on them. So it's more likely that they will call 911. So we're talking about bystander intervention, and we're talking about these intervention strategies. And people might be thinking, well, why should we intervene? What if it has nothing to do with me? But some of the benefits of this bystander intervention are amazing and so important in our society. So it discourages victim blaming. So by intervening, the responsibility shifts from the victim, from the target of this harassment or violence, and it shifts it to our friends, family, the community, and more importantly, the perpetrator. That it's not their fault that this happened to them, but it's the perpetrator's fault, or it's the community's fault that we didn't intervene on this situation. We also see, of course, like I've been mentioning, it is a chance to change our social norms. The more people who intervene and the more socially acceptable it is to intervene, the more likely it is to change this social norm. And it gives us a collective responsibility that this is what we do when we see these types of things happening. And then, of course, like I've been mentioning, this early intervention in these smaller things, in these jokes, in this catcalling or small things of harassment can prevent them from growing into a bigger or more harmful problem later. So if somebody who is telling these inappropriate jokes, who is sexually harassing friends or coworkers, if they're not checked, if they're not stopped, then they know they can get away with it. And so it's more likely that in the future, they're going to do something more violent. So we really want to intervene on these situations early so that we can stop them from ever getting as extreme as an assault. And so one thing that we often coincide with bystander intervention or being an active bystander is being an upstander. Being an upstander and guiding people to doing the right thing. So upstander, really being an upstander and using upstander guidance can be different for everybody, but it's a person who stands up for their beliefs, who says and does what they think is right, even if they're alone, who is not a passive bystander and sees wrong and acts. It's a person who takes a stand against acts of injustice or intolerance and stands up for others. So I hope after this educational class, after this presentation, you guys all become upstanders and become active bystanders. And I want you to think to yourself, and I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to be quiet and think about it. But what does being an upstander mean to you? How can you be an upstander? And you don't have to share, but if you would like to, you can share in the chat box. But I just want to give you guys a few seconds to think. What does being an upstander mean to you?
I'm going to go ahead and share some with you, Rilee. We have somebody that noted seeing something, saying something, speaking out. Barry noted getting involved. Miriam noted not being a passive person. Armando said being brave.
I love that.
Shared seeing something wrong and immediately fixing it. Sarah shared not being afraid to be the only one to do the right thing. Levon shared a confident person, and Monique shared being the voice of someone who is trying to be silenced.
I love it. You guys, those are all so great. And like I mentioned, being an upstander can be different for everyone, and it can entail different things. So I want you to hold on to that as you move forward after this presentation. Don't forget that. Don't forget what you said, and try to practice it in your everyday life. So I want to end with a what would you do? So I have this situation, and I want y'all to give me one of the D's, every single one. We're going to come up with a way that we would be an active bystander. Okay, so you're at a party and you notice that a person is very drunk and someone else is trying to get them to go into the other room with them. So what would you do for direct? How would you directly intervene in that situation? Give you all a chance to type in the chat. So you're at a party. Somebody is very drunk, noticeably drunk. Someone's trying to get them to go into the other room.
So, okay, so we have one for distract. And they noted take the drunk person away from the situation. Nicole shared tell them to back off before rape charges get pressed. We have distract, asking the drunk person to go with them, I'm assuming. Go with the person and pretend we're friends, in parentheses if we're not, and take them home or not leave them unattended. Sherry shared, excuse me, what's going on here? I would address first the possible victim to assess that part. Somebody else noted be involved, interfere, distract and intervene.
Good, love it, awesome. So for direct, I heard some of you say, step in and ask what's going on. So yeah, hey, you need to stop, they're not sober, what's going on? I heard a lot of distract. Distract is one of the easier ones to do sometimes. So I'll jump right to that one. So, hey, do you want to go get another drink with me? So yeah, like some of you were saying, pulling the target aside. If they're not your friend, pretend you're their friend and ask them if they want to go or go home, get another drink. Love it. What about delegate? How would we delegate? If we're not comfortable being direct or distracting.
So we have get someone else to help. Somebody noted send over your boyfriend to say he is with you.
Yeah.
Ask a friend for help. Tell an individual to call a cab for the intoxicated person. Asking the host to check on the drunk person.
Love it. Those are all great.
Get support from the group, notify the host.
Yeah, definitely. So all of those are wonderful, but of course, one of the things that we can do that might be more effective is finding the party's host, because it's their party. They have a little bit more power in that situation. But all of the ones that you guys said were great. I love the getting your significant other to get involved, be like, hey, they're with me, what are you doing? It's a good one. All right, what about document? What kind of things could you document about this situation if they're already getting help?
Okay, so we have Rachel, she noted record, license plate numbers, get names. Stay near to track. Oh, sorry, it goes by so fast. Make sure you stay near to track all things. He is an aggressor. Note this and let people know. Take a photo. Take notice of what is happening. Details. Take a photo of the car.
Love it. Yeah.
The idea of recording it on a phone quite blatantly, that alone can stop the perpetration, and just keeping watch and getting names.
Yeah, definitely. So those are all amazing. So we want to take pictures. We want to make note of the important details. I really like what somebody said about the license plate, especially if you're at a bar or something like that and you see them walking out to the car. I love that. Wonderful. All right. And the last one, debrief. What might that look like on either end?
Okay, so we have pulling the target aside to see if they are okay, explaining to an authority or the host what you witnessed occurring, talk to them to make sure they are safe. Talk with both to see if they're okay mentally or in need of future help. Let the aggressor know he is out of line, perhaps stop drinking, follow up with them when they are sober, figure out who they came with or came from and speak with the host, and then making sure all is well, answer any questions, and intervene and make sure they don't go in.
Wonderful. I love it. I especially love the one who said to debrief and check in when they're sober, because that's really important, because they might not remember what happened. And if they don't, then it's still really important to address it because it still happened. But also it gives them time to kind of unwind and think about what happened. So yeah, definitely. When we're talking to the perpetrator, it's not okay. How would you feel if somebody did that to your sister or to your significant other? And then of course, like you guys were saying, checking in with the victim. Are you okay? Do you want to go somewhere safe? And making sure that you're supportive for them. Love it. You guys did wonderful. All right, and that is all I have for you. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have. And I hope y'all are able to be upstanders in your community now and engage in active bystander intervention.
Thank you so much, Rilee. This was so informative. I actually I was scrolling back up because somebody did have a question when you were going over your what would you do scenario. And this is from Dan Taylor, and they noted, how can I change from being a person who does not have the skills or confidence to someone who does?
Yeah, so that, I understand your frustration with that, because I used to be not really someone who would want to intervene either. Like, I will admit it, I was very passive when I was a bystander. So I think the best thing to do is practice. So the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it, the more comfortable you're going to be. So maybe start with delegating. If you notice that a behavior is wrong, tell somebody else about it if they're more comfortable to intervene. And then once you start that, it will get easier and easier each time. And some people may never be comfortable being direct when intervening, and that's okay. As long as we're noticing these situations and we're trying to help, then that's all that we can ask for in this society, is being a society of trying to help and trying to stop this violence. So I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. I had role playing with trusted people. I think role playing with family members, role playing with friends, I think can also help in that confidence and practicing. Thank you. So we do have some time, so if there's any other questions, we actually have one. So how can I overcome with shame? I am afraid that they tell me that it is not related to me.
Yeah, so, and that can be difficult when it's a stranger or somebody that we don't know when we're intervening. But when we think about it, we all live in this society. So every type of violence is related to us. It impacts us in some way. So I know that doesn't help. Like, you're not going to say that to the person intervening, like, well, this impacts me too. We're all connected. But it's just, again, having that confidence and knowing the reason why you're doing it. If you know why you're doing it and you're passionate about it, then it's not going to matter what the other people say. So again, it's that practice that'll help you get over that shame and help you become that active, confident bystander that you want to be. And so it takes some work. It does. I'm not going to lie to you guys. You're not going to be the perfect active bystander today. It takes practice because it's uncomfortable. It is. It's very uncomfortable to walk up to somebody and say, what you're doing isn't right. And I understand that. It's hard, but that practice is what's going to make you better and more confident. And it's what is ultimately going to lead us as a society to normalizing it, so that when somebody does say that's not your place, they're not going to say that anymore because they're going to know it's everybody's place to step in.
I agree. We actually have a comment from Sherry, and she noted, this has happened to me a few times. I reply that it takes a community, and when I see someone being harmed, it harms me. Even in our presentations that we do when it comes to bullying prevention, we say a similar thing. We say it takes a village.
Mm-hmm.
It takes having so many parties involved to this culture, environment. So thank you for sharing that, Sherry. We've been getting a lot of thank yous, Rilee, for sharing this presentation. They learned something new today. They love it. And I have one other question for you. And they would like to know, they wanted to ask if you know, let's say if someone is in a verbal abusive relationship and now it's getting physical, but she thinks it's okay, how do we deal with that? And this person has been trying to tell her her self-worth is more.
Okay, so this is a friend, I'm assuming, or loved one who's in this relationship. So it can be really difficult, and honestly, I can't give you the answer in 30 seconds because domestic violence or intimate partner violence is much more complex than a lot of people realize. If you are interested in learning more, maybe getting support, I highly suggest you calling our office, our hotline, because of course we're a rape crisis center. We deal with domestic violence, sexual assault, and all that type of stuff. And we'll be able to help you a little bit more with that. If I could give you the 30-second answer, I would say just keep supporting your friend, keep being there for her, keep telling her that she's worth more, that you are always there for her. That's the biggest thing that people in domestic violence situations need, is that support.
Thank you. And we went ahead and added your website in the chat box. Okay. So information on their programming and resources is in the chat box. And I have one more question. So what if the victim chooses sides with the abuser and they tell us to get away or leave them alone?
So that, yes, that is a lot of times what happens because they don't see what is going on is actually an abuse. And as frustrating as that can be, personally, I know that I've had a loved one who's been in a domestic violence situation, and it's really, really frustrating. But they may tell you that, but you still want to be there. You can tell them, okay, I'll give you some space, but I'm here if you ever need me. And just constantly reassuring them that you are there for support. Because a lot of the times the reason that survivors or victims of intimate partner violence don't leave is because they don't have support. So just constantly telling them, even if they might want you to leave them alone for a little bit, text them every once in a while. I'm thinking about you. I'm here if you need me.
Thank you. I just think the solutions, the strategies, the tips that you shared, it ties in with bullying prevention, being an upstander, and I like to say, it creates a ripple effect. So
Mhm.
if it's one person standing up for somebody else, you know, all these other teens or kids are going to notice that, and they're going to want to do the same thing. But it just takes that bravery and that courage on your part to stand up for your beliefs and that gut feeling that you know something is wrong happening right in front of you.
Mhm.
I appreciate this information. I think as an adult, this has been super helpful, because I know I've been in situations where I know I should have done something, but I did stand in the background. So it's just, it's really eye-opening. I thank you, Rilee. I want to go ahead and just share my screen one last time, and just share our social media information with everybody. Please follow us on social media. And then I know that the Rape Area Crisis Center, you all are on social media as well. So I will send a follow-up email with their information so you can follow them. They're very active on social media. And I just urge everybody, it's World Kindness Week. Tomorrow's actually World Kindness Day. Just spread a little kindness, whether you're doing it in person, whether you're at work. You know, if you're a student watching this online, and tag us if you're doing it online, or if you want to take a picture and showcase it on social media, make sure to tag us. We want to share it. We want to share, you know, these acts of kindness, because we definitely need it during this time. And just please be aware, we have a couple of more webinars for the rest of the week. They are geared more towards youth, but all are welcome. And all of our webinars that we have had previously are uploaded on our YouTube channel, and the recording is on our website as well. So please take advantage of that. And yeah, I just want to thank everybody for being here today, and especially you, Rilee. Thank you so much for this beneficial and important information that is so needed.
Of course, I'm glad y'all came, and I hope y'all learned something.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.